Как вы оцениваете степень готовности российских компаний к тому, чтобы начать активно использовать инструмент корпоративного венчуринга для реализации собственных стратегий? Как эта деятельность соотносится с деятельностью их коллег наших компаний в странах БРИКС? Видите ли вы что-то подобное, аналогичное в других странах? И чтобы вы могли посоветовать нашим компаниям уже в части, я бы сказал, технологии и создания корпоративных венчурных фондов и адаптации общей структуры управления к продвинутым формам такого корпоративного венчурного инвестирования.
Thank you. So I'll try to give you some background. I've been working in the innovation, big term, or high-tech market for the last 30 years. Started my career in the Israeli army, where the Israeli army tried to be innovative. Let me walk you through a concept, what is innovation, or why do we think innovation is important. Fleur Pelin, she is currently the Minister for Innovation for the French government. She was in Israel last week, and in an interview to the Israeli press, she said the following: in France, the process from the idea to the final product is not managed properly. It is most likely because we tend to mix between innovation and R&D. First point, innovation and R&D. And at the end of her speech, she says, the major problem of French people is that we don't think globally. We'll take her words that were just in the press 2 days ago and try to see how it relates to the local market. EY has been working from Israel in helping governments through the entire globe in fostering innovation on a state level and specific companies on what is innovation for them and how do they get there. So about 3 years ago we came to Moscow. Everything started actually at Tomsk, but we then understood that what we saw in Israel 15 years ago or in the States 25 years ago actually happening now in Russia. So we have been working in the last 2 years with, in Russia, together with EY Russia, sending people back and forth, trying to bring the experience from Israel into Russia. And Russia is the biggest country in the world. You know, not only the biggest, actually one of the richest. 140 million people. Number one in gas reserve. Number two in oil production, coal, iron, gold, natural resources. You can find everything you want in the great Russian land. And yet, Paolo Tolini said that they are moving people from China back to the States. Countries today can foster one of the three things. Either they have cheap labor, like China used to have, and India used to have, but you see what happened to labor cost, and Intel started to pull out engineers from China back to the States, or they have, second, natural resources, like Russia has, like Australia has, like Brazil has, and we'll talk about the BRIC in a minute, but you see what happened to the gas prices. The gas prices are going down. So countries have come to understand that the only thing that actually creates something new is what we call a perpetuum mobile, is innovation. And how do you win? You win when you innovate. You win on intellectual property, on the power of the brain. And this is what countries are striving for the last 5-6 years, everywhere you go. Governments are putting efforts into innovation. It's not a coincidence that France have their own Minister for Innovation. It's the only country that has a Minister for Innovation. There is a Ministry for Innovation in Switzerland as well. Switzerland of all places, yeah? The Alps, the ski, the chocolate, and yet they have a Ministry for Innovation. We in Israel, we had no other solution. You know, we have one river, which is not really a source of irrigation. We have two seas, one is dead, and the other one is dying. So our farmers has to be engineers and scientists from day one. They really had to create something out of no land and no water. So Israeli agriculture is known everywhere in the world as a leading scientist and leading technologies and leading innovators. We talk about the Israeli army. We have to fight quality against quantity. We are a very small country of less than 8 million people, and we had to bring technology into the Israeli army. So about 35 years ago, the army has decided to create a program. And we have Dr. Ami Lebanon with us today. They're taking 30 kids, fresh out of high school, put them through a crash course, doing their bachelor degrees in mathematics, physics, and computer science in 3 years, and sending them to do innovation in the army. Think differently, because you don't have another choice. So limited options bring great values and great results. Let's try to see what does it mean for Russia. Because what we've learned working with Singapore, with Brazil, with Russia, with the state of Israel, is that every environment dictates a different solution. You cannot take what happens in the States, as John illustrated, and craft it into Russia because the ecosystem is totally different. And we'll talk about how we look at innovation on a global scale. So we have 3 opportunities actually. Either we do in-house R&D, and we have to distinguish what we call corporate venture capital and corporate venturing. Those are 2 different things, and every company will find a different solution that will work for her. Either we do M&As, and John illustrated some M&A activities when he showed the gap, how you cross a chasm into growth, or you do CVC, what we call a risk investment. In-house R&D, and you know, the entire slide I had, I just took them out because Flair Perlin has said it. There is a mixture or mixed understanding between R&D and innovation. Those are 2 separate things. R&D in most corporates, especially in Russia, is measured upon returns. It's a gradual business. You go step by step. There are very, 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 very few, almost non-existent companies within Russia or within Israel that have a unit that can do whatever it wants, with no budget, with no expectations. You know, do whatever you want, do something risky. So R&D doesn't bring innovation. M&A. M&A is a great slogan, but let me walk you through some data. This is just a snapshot of M&A transaction in the last quarter in the States. If you look at the United States and you look at this figure, you'll see that in the United States, the difference between transaction done by a private equity, 46, and corporation, 519, is a ratio of 10 to 1. Corporates do M&A, and why? Look at the amount of cash the global technology company has on a net basis on their balance sheet. $784 billion on a net basis. Apple announced Q3 reports where their accountants, $8.6 billion revenue for the 3rd quarter. They have over $100 billion, $100 billion. If you put them in the bank, you basically get 0. So they buy. The top 10 technology companies in the world have an aggregate of $500 billion. The next 15 have another 260. And on a macro scale, nobody can compete. No government, no company can compete with so much firepower. They are on a buying spree. The last couple of years have been tremendous from an M&A point of view. And we in Israel, you in Russia, someone in Brazil, in Australia, or in China cannot compete with their firepower. It's not a game of government anymore. It's a game of corporation, huge corporation. Some of them are bigger than some of the countries. So when you look at those numbers, you understand that an M&A from an innovation point of view is very problematic to actually execute. Asia, you look at the number of transactions in the last quarter. You look at the number again between PE and corporate. Again, 57 to 1. Private equity did 1 transaction, companies did 57 transactions in China and the area. You look at Europe, the same ratio, 128 transactions by corporation in the last quarter and 13 by private equity. So it's a corporate game. And if companies are buying, and M&A is seldom being seen as a great success, how can you put it as a strategy? So if R&D doesn't work because it's not bringing innovation, and M&A is something that the entire world is competing on, as price of cash is practically 0 in some of the countries we're talking about. And here you look, some of the major countries in which transactions have happened. Of course, US, UK, Canada, etc., etc. You see that China and India, you do not see Brazil, for instance. So if it doesn't work, you have to go to CVC. And here I agree with some of the things that John said. There isn't a one answer. It's not a cookie cutter. We've been working with companies globally everywhere. Every company starts in a different ecosystem. What exists, what doesn't exist. What works, what doesn't work. And the only thing you have to do, and I won't go into details, is actually be very, very, very pragmatic. If we look at the 20 largest venturing firms, Intel Capital, again a client of ours, is the largest venture capital in the world, and it's a corporate venture capital. It does over $250 million of investments every year. And actually, about a third of their investments are profitable, which is a high, high hit ratio. But there's one company missing. Who is missing? This company. And you know why Google is missing from the list? Because Google as a whole is a corporate venture capital. Their search business, their ad business, is actually adjacent. Sergey Brin and Larry Page are not interested with this business. They are interested with Google Glass, which is innovation. Google Car, which is innovation. Google TV, which is innovation. So the entire Google business is geared towards innovation. We cannot take Google as an example for anything. It's too big. It's so big, it's bigger, as we said, of some of the government we're talking about. But we should understand that the way we've done business until now, if we want to foster innovation, if we want to create something that will create innovation, and whether, as John said, whether it's accelerator, innovator hub, incubator, corporate venture capital, it doesn't really matter. I'm sure that Russia has some unique positions because the government and РВК, together with Mr. Ramzian, are ready to understand, to help companies understand how they foster innovation. Now, the only thing we tell companies, and we have a whole book on how you build your innovation, step by step. I've shrinked it to 5 slides, and I won't go on every because every line here is a whole couple of pages of what you need to do, and how you need to strategize and think what you want to do, because innovation is critical. New technology will drive commodity prices down. Profit will not increase forever. You cannot stay local, you have to go global. So innovation is critical. We've been hired by the State of Israel about 4 months ago to do a strategic work for the State of Israel on how to foster innovation in the next 5 to 10 years. Now, Israel being perceived as one of the most innovative countries, and yet the State of Israel doesn't think everything we've done until now is enough. We have created a concept for countries, and we've done it for almost 22 countries until now, that looks at the ecosystem. There are about 200 programs that governments deploy in the G20 plus Singapore and South Korea to foster innovation. Most of them deal with how do you get people to innovate. It tends to do with education, funding, regulation, and the innovative spirit. What we found in Russia, that the most problematic issue elsewhere doesn't exist in Russia. The people have an innovation spirit. People are daring, have great education, and the fundamentals are there. Regulation, bureaucracy need to be improved. New things have to be implemented. And RVC and the government are doing great things in fostering innovation in the last 5 years, and I know they have great plans. Funding has never been an issue for Russia. There's enough money. And now what we see is the 5th element, which is most important, which is what we call the coordinated effort. Coordinated effort will allow you to create an ecosystem. So all the moving parts can work in tandem to create innovation for each and every company in an ecosystem. So those are some of the questions that each and every company should really think about when they embark on a corporate venture capital, what we call an innovation program. I'll be happy to send these slides to everyone who wanted. You have my email there, just send me an email and I'll be happy to send them. And again, it's a thought process. It's specifically for every company in every region, but I think that if you don't innovate, your existence is in jeopardy. Thank you.